A cockroach is standing in a hole, thinking. The hole is dark and cramped. The cockroach does not know how it ended up there. In principle, the hole is right up its alley, as it constantly has to hide from predators. But now it cannot recall what happened before holing up in the hole. The cockroach has recollections, flashes, an apparition of a metallic green creature, an incredibly beautiful siren. Yes, the cockroach was looking for food among the leaf litter, and the creature appeared from amidst the flowers. The cockroach fled in terror. It makes off within 40 milliseconds.
Okay, I'm Mariah Besharov. I'm professor of organizations and impact here at ZED Business School. I'm also the academic director of the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship, and I am so thrilled to welcome you to this evening's event. It is a joint event between the Skoll Center and Oxford Ministry for the Future, and I'll kick us off. I'm going to turn it over to Annette in a few minutes, and then we have a really exciting set of speakers and panel discussions, and we'll engage you in that as well. I just want to say a few words about the Skoll Center and why we're co-hosting this event and why we're so excited about it. So we work with social entrepreneurs and other social innovators to help them tackle the most complex, pressing challenges of our time. And we do that through our research, both academic and applied, through our learning programs and through our convenings. And core to how we do this is the notion of bridging. In what we do, we bridge research and practice, and you'll see that in the discussions tonight. And in the work that we do with leaders, we help them build organizations that can bridge across purpose and profit, across local communities and attention to the needs of particular locations, but also addressing and scaling up to have global reach and impact. And so we're particularly excited about tonight's event because bridging is really embedded in everything that we're talking about and even in how we're doing the event through this partnership. And we hope that through the bridging, through the different interdisciplinary perspectives you'll hear from a variety of academics, from the humanities to STEM fields, and also from some leading AI entrepreneurs, two of our alums in particular, that out of that discussion will come some new ideas for you, and new ideas that perhaps challenge your perspective on AI, help you to see it in a different way. And I would say that for us as a Skoll Center, we view AI as sort of doubly challenging, but also doubly an opportunity in the sense that it's clearly one of the most complex, pressing challenges of our time in itself. And it also cuts across everything else that we do, right? And everything in our work at the center, and I'm sure the same is true for the work that you all do. And so again, as you think about this really, universal, pressing challenge of our time in itself as it affects all these cross-cutting issues, I'll encourage you to think about the bridges you can build, the bridges you hear, the connections you make, and to reflect on what is learned from that, from the juxtaposition of these different perspectives, because we believe, and I know Annette shares this belief, that is at that intersection across those bridges where the new ideas, new approaches, and innovative solutions come from. So thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the evening, and over to Annette to take us forward.
Thank you very much, Mariah. Thank you to Mette Morsing, the Dean of the ZED Business School, and thank you for the Skoll Center team to make it possible for us to do an Oxford Ministry for the Future event at our business school. OMF is coming home. So we are going to go on a journey together, and a couple of months ago, AI seemed to be much more an opportunity to us here at the business school than a threat. But now we are in the midst of a war in which supposedly or allegedly AI has been deployed for the first time as part of autonomous lethal weapons. We got to the point where AI is crossing certain boundaries that are inducing much larger amounts of fear and dread than we might have been feeling over AI discussions over the past year or so. So the Oxford Ministry for the Future is a really good setting in which to discuss AI because we are leading with the humanities. That means we are leading with voices from the arts, from literature, and this gives us the advantage over other academic discussions to engage with emotions that otherwise academics don't engage with. A year ago, we had an event where we heard Brian Eno talking about what art is for. And he said there are two things that art can do for us. The first thing is it allows us to explore our feelings, our emotions, which are in relation to a subject, in this case, AI, so that we can articulate these feelings and start a journey towards the future. Because the second thing that art does, it allows us to imagine other worlds. It allows us to imagine better worlds, more desirable futures, but it allows us to imagine worlds that we would rather not have. This is the reason why in tonight's discussion we are going to start with two artists, a visual artist whose work you have been viewing, and a literary artist, Joanna Kavenna. They will be joining me in a moment. The journey then carries on to unwrap the issue of AI and big tech and the question of what they are doing, what are these new technologies doing in our lives, in our organizations, in our society. I think you have all experienced the changes, the rapid changes that are unfolding around us. So while Joanna and Maya, the artists, are going to unwrap a little bit the dark underbelly of these new technologies, we are going to be joined by academic voices exploring the topic from the point of view of AI and ethics, computer science, and also massive, because it turns out AI is changing human physiology and psychology. But we are also looking for hope. We are also looking for answering the question, what are the good applications of AI? How can AI be a force for good in organizations, in society? And we are very pleased that two of those good actors are joining us from the social entrepreneurship group of school. Two of the alumni we are very proud to have with us today, Grace and Nick. So what I suggest we'll do next, I'm going to invite our first set of speakers. First of all, the artists. Where are you? Maya, please do come in. There are steps here, and Joanna. And to reduce the number of changeovers, you're going to fill these chairs. So could we have Carissa with us as well, and Mike and Vlad? And for the sake of simplicity, halfway through, the artists will swap with the social entrepreneurs. And if I forget this, somebody please remind me. Okay, so I'm going to sit here. And you ready? We're going to do a Q&A at the end. We're probably going to have about 25 minutes. So if you have any questions, just please store them up. Right. Yes, charge your glasses, please. There are not going to be any toast, but I think you will need that. So let's start with the art. How many of you have seen the artwork that has been running here? Has most of the room seen? Okay, so this was a two-part artwork. The title of the artwork was On the Third Day. And this is another artwork out there, which we're going to talk about separately. But Maya, would you like to tell us a few words about On the Third Day and how does the symbolism help us relate to the topic of AI and big tech?
Yeah, thank you. So most of you probably saw the video that I was playing. So it's a two-part book. There's a video and an animation. The animation will play right after the event again, if you didn't see it. And in the animation, a cockroach wakes up in a cave and it has 3 days to figure out why it's there, if it wants to stay alive. And in the video, you saw the flower petals moving, and now I can maybe reveal it because you've seen it. So what's making the movement is 300 to 400 cockroaches under the flower petals.
And they procured these cockroaches yourself and lived with them for a while?
I had 2 biologists to help me, and we did have a
This wasn't an AI-generated image.
not AI generated. And it's kind of, I find the flower petals in the context of this event, it's kind of this, we have very big hopes for AI and big tech and very big fears for them. But then we have bugs, and bugs are usually, like in the tech, they're kind of the unintended consequences or behavior of the hardware or software. And they're mainly the ones that, kind of the unintended consequences that are happening are maybe the ones that I would least to pay attention to. So that's why bugs in there.
Yeah. I have to say I was very excited when I first saw Maya's artwork and the bugs in particular, because in Joanna Kavenna's novel about big tech, it's a darkly comic takedown of big tech, and the firm is called Beetle. So bugs born in this, so the symbolism was immediately there. Shall we talk about your other cockroach, the one we actually feel for?
I had one in the cave. So, in one way, we could, sometimes I'm thinking if I'm the one doom scrolling in the cave, like so giving away all my information for the sake of getting application that makes parking a bit easier, or kind of in the name of convenience.
Yes.
And the cockroach has to, but it has soul. There's a hole in the piece if you see it. Depends from your own attitude if you see it hopeful or pessimistic, actually.
So, in a sense, we are all cockroaches now.
Yeah, we have 3 days. AI is progressing so fast.
So Maya is giving us a wake-up call, and I think it's quite interesting for all of us to think about, do we experiencing this wake-up call ourselves, and how do we interpret it? So I will ask you, all of you here, if this is a wake-up moment, then in what sense is it a wake-up moment for you? Okay, one last thing, we have got this work above us. That the work is titled, well, it's Maya's award-winning portrait series, which was finalist at the National Gallery's Portrait Award in 2017 and won, I think, another prestigious prize, the New Portrait Award. I remember seeing it at the time in the news because I was very intrigued by the title of this work. Does anyone know the title of this work? It's called One of Them is a Human. I think it speaks for itself. Yeah, so I will leave you with the puzzle of working out which one might be the human. And we are moving on to Joanna because these portraits seem to be the perfect illustration for ZED. So those of you who, actually I want to ask, has anyone read ZED? I've got a little library here with me, and this is the portable magic of ZED.
That's one, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Joanna is here, so if you want her to silence, she will do this for you. So ZED has been hailed as the new 1984. In many sense, well, there is a George Orwell expert among us, so I'm not going to go deeply into the parallels. But this is very definitely the novel of our time, the big novel about big tech. So there are two things that are happening in ZED, I think, that haven't quite happened in real life. And Michael Wooldridge is going to be able to give us a little bit of orientation of when are we going to get here, if at all. So this company, if nobody starts a libel case, that I will utter to say, probably modeled on Google in this book, has achieved two things that hasn't been quite achieved by the big tech companies yet, but they are on the way. The first one is AI agents are everywhere, much more so than we are experiencing today. And the AI agents come in two forms. Some of them are in devices, they are invisible, but that doesn't stop them from constantly talking, nagging, and nudging people, like the fridges and the beetle bands that people are wearing. And there is another type of AI agent that is embodied, and they look like these portraits up there. They are the very intelligent assistants that are hardly distinguishable from human assistants, and now populate the offices of Beetle and the media company and the police and so on, multiple areas of life. So what's happening here is that we can't see the difference between the human and the non-human. In some of the meeting places, which are virtual reality places, the humans can choose to appear with an avatar, and thereby they can disguise themselves into whatever they want to be. In one memorable scene, the ethics committee of Beetle meets, and all the board members appear with an avatar of a beetle. I'm sure there is a rationale for this. So over to Joanna. What happens when we start blurring the boundary between the real and the virtual?
Thank you, Annette, and thanks so much for inviting me to this wonderful event and to you all for being here. I think that we're living in this really extraordinary, terrifying, exhilarating age, and there's this amazing technology, and we'll hear more about it from other discussants. And then there are these huge questions about dreams and nightmares, and you mentioned Orwell, and Orwell makes that brilliant point that a utopian scheme can become a dystopia. And whose dream are you living in? Who's propelling the dream? So I was really interested in that, and the idea that if you had all of I wrote it in 2017, and I placed it in the mid-2020s, so where we are now. I wanted to look at what would happen if the surveillance tech that was already ubiquitous was amplified by a realm of technology that was already apparent but wasn't yet ubiquitous. So driverless cars, robotics, AI agents, as you say, fridges that say, I really don't think you should have another bottle of wine tonight, those kinds of things. But if all of this technology was brought in by a company that forgot ethics, so it just forgot in its excitement and pursuit of the ultimate, most sort of beautifully run and orderly and predictable society, if it just forgot, and it forgot to ask people what they wanted. So that was very much the question, and I thought there was obviously a danger that you'd end up in something that would be an autocracy, except in the language described it, that people would be told that they weren't living in a autocracy all the time, an autocracy, but they in fact were, and that would be the eeriness, the dreamlikeness of this society. And yes, you asked about the AIs. I thought that would be, and that's a very interesting question about AI. There is this moment that we're in at the moment where we're being invited to elide the AI and the human. When we deal with an LLM, we're being kind of invited to perceive it as sentient, as human. And of course, as Michael and my colleagues will tell you, it's not, it's a form of predictive text. It's it effectively, as Carissa also writes, it's recognizing patterns and making predictions about most probable next token in a kind of mathematical probability city. It's not centered. So I thought that addition was a kind of civilizational damage where the human's forgotten again and the difference is forgotten.
So one of the other achievements of this company that is already coming to pass in reality is this predictive algorithm, which they call the life chain. And it just struck me the other day that Palantir, the company that's supplying software for autonomous lethal weapons, do you know how they call their predictive algorithm? It's the death chain, the shortest route to executing killing. So we have got this ominously named life chain. You couldn't have known Palantir at the time when you wrote this. So the life chain predictions in your book are truly life-changing for people. Can you talk a little bit about how the life chain works and how is it possible for it to garner so much power in a society which is supposed to be our very own United Kingdom, with a government that's supposed to look out for us?
Yes. So again, I had this idea. It was really about taxonomies, and so as Carissa writes in Prophecy so brilliantly, a prediction is not a reality, it's a prediction. And so that was the first idea, that whenever you're dealing with a predictive architecture, it's predicting something that hasn't happened. And then there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where you're then guided towards fulfilling the prediction. And again, if that was being done without ethics, without transparency, there are huge questions about democracy, about autonomy, about freedom. And I had this idea that there would be this slightly offended utopianism, that the company people would just think, well, why don't you want to live the best life of your lives in line with these predictions? Because we've seen what is the best outcome for you. And so the idea what could possibly go wrong. There's another question really, which is that when you do this predicting, you're expecting the past to carry on indefinitely and to continue, but also you're assuming that humans are kind of mathematically comprehensible. And in fact, maths is a wonderful tool and it's incredibly important, and there are so many very useful applications, and it's absolutely brilliant. I'm totally up for maths, it's wonderful. But there's also a question that humans aren't very mathematically comprehensible. We do things for no reason, we fall in love for no reason, we suddenly have an idea, and there's all sorts of mystery, I think, within humans that can't be calibrated in that system. So it was bound to go wrong.
Yes, which is why probably ZED is the title of your book. So ZED is this uncertainty in predictions that we might call serendipity or never events in medicine. And I think in Carissa's book, we're coming on to you, Carissa, this is also the source of our very humanity, right? The source of where good life is. So I'd like Carissa to sort of unwrap a little bit what Joanna describes through fiction, and you know that in 2017 is turning into a dystopia around us. You argue in another book that another piece of portable magic here. This is a preview copy of Carissa's Prophecy, which is coming out in a couple of months from now. So can you talk about prophecy? And this is not fiction. This is a serious academic word. For me, it's serious. Very, very entertainingly written, but it's still philosophy. It's ethics. It's the ethics of AI, as we all need to know it. So can you tell us a little bit what is passing now in reality, not in fiction?
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. And I think it's partly what you alluded to about the blurring of reality with fiction, in a sense, because any kind of prediction is, at best, an educated guess. But more often than not, is a power play in disguise. And I absolutely loved ZED. I read it years ago, and I found it very prescient and right on point.
Did that inspire prophecy?
I'm sure it's in the mix, for sure. It's part of how I've grown to see tech. We tend to think about it's wonderful to be at the business school, and one of the reasons it's wonderful to be at the business school is because we talk a lot about forecasting in business, and every person who runs a company depends on forecasting, from deciding what kind of company you'll have to deciding where it will be, and who is your audience and what your product will be depends on certain kinds of predictions. And it's very easy to forget that predictions are never facts. And in particular, when it comes to predictions about human beings, there is a tendency for predictions to become self-fulfilling prophecy, as Joanna was saying, because it changes expectations. So if a student asks me for a recommendation letter, and in my letter I predict that they won't have a job, they won't have a job. Was it because I predicted it? No, I made that come true. And that's exactly how algorithms work. So let me tell you a story to illustrate this point, because it's not a new fact. We've just forgotten about it. Louis XI ruled France, and he had an astrologer in court. And one day, the astrologer predicted that a woman would die within 7 days, and the woman died. So Louis was freaked out. He thought either this guy killed the woman to prove his point, or he can actually see the future. And what if he sees my downfall? He has to go. So he orders his servants that upon his signal, they are to throw the astrologer off the cliff. You'd be surprised at how many astrologers end their lives that way. If you're an astrologer, stay away from cliffs. But before giving the signal, Louis approaches the astrologer and says, you are known to have great prescient prowess. Tell me one thing. What is your fate? How long do you have to live? And the astrologer goes and says, I will die 3 days before your majesty. Louis never gave the signal. Was the astrologer running probability numbers? No. He pulled a fast one on Louis. And essentially, that is what we're falling for every day when it comes both to AI and to tech executives. If you were to ask an ancient Greek, what is the most cutting-edge decision-making process, they would have said something like the Oracle of Delphi. We say the same about AI. And if you start to look at AI in this way, very quickly, you will change how you react to every time an algorithm recommends something or every time a tech executive says that tomorrow we will be using AI for everything everywhere. And in a sense, even though the prophets have changed their job title, oracles became medieval astrologers, who became social scientists, who became computer scientists and data analysts and tech executives, the political function of prediction is exactly the same as it has been for a long, long time. And so we shouldn't be dazzled by the technology because it's hiding a social and political function that has always been there. And one way to put it in a very philosophical jargon is in the terms of J.L. Austin. He wrote a book called How to Do Things with Words. And his point was that there are certain sentences that are descriptive of the world, and there are sentences that are not describing the world, but are doing things. So when a priest pronounces somebody husband and wife, they're marrying someone. And when a naval officer is christening a ship, they're doing something other than describing the world. Well, when we make a prediction, it's very deceptive because it sounds like a description of the world. If I tell you, you will succeed in your career, it sounds like I'm describing how the world will be. But what in fact I'm doing is issuing something closer to a command, an order. And what I'm telling you, if I'm a tech executive and saying, you will be using AI for this tomorrow, is go out there and fulfill my vision of the world, the one that happens to line my pockets. And when we give credence to those predictions, what we're doing is obeying in advance. And the book is an invitation to interpret predictions, not as something that you should believe just without questioning, but as an invitation to defiance.
Carissa, can you tell us some examples when AI can fool us into doing things that otherwise we wouldn't be doing? So what is at stake here? And I think we are going into this territory which emerges when AI companies win big contracts from government agencies. So which are your key concerns?
I have so many that it's hard to pick. One of them is how we are using AI everywhere. It's not only in the doctor's office, it's not only in the courtroom, it's in dating apps and everywhere in between. A second concern is that invites systemic risks that we are not taking into account because they're very hard to quantify. It's very easy to quantify the risks that AI quantifies, very hard to quantify the risks that AI brings. And with this, I'm not referring to existential risk, but I am referring to, for example, if we use one algorithm, which is a kind of a version of the same algorithm in all our systems, and it has a glitch or it gets hacked, we're in trouble. But more generally, I think we are losing critical skills by externalizing decision-making and even processes that are not supposed to be a decision, but that we end up deferring to the algorithm everywhere. One example that you don't know whether to cry or laugh was that Peter Kyle, the previous Minister of Digital Affairs, was using ChatGPT to ask it about policy for tech. And you won't be surprised that ChatGPT thought that all these privacy rules were very cumbersome and that we should do without them.
That was after Joanna wrote in her book that the UK has the most benign regulatory environment, benign and beneficial regulatory environment for AI. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
But we're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing companies using AI to make decisions. We're seeing governments. I see law firms using AI for quite concerning
Is
tasks.
police using AI to predict who is about to commit a crime?
And it's not only that AI is not neutral and that these companies have a financial interest that doesn't align with our best interest, but it's also that they are designed to be sycophantic, to hook us. And we like being told we're right. So these systems will tell you that you're brilliant, that you're the next messiah. And we lose perspective. Part of the value of having this kind of conversation, but other kinds of conversations with actual human beings, is that human beings tend to be autonomous creatures who disagree with us. I know, the goal. But that disagreement that can be so annoying keeps us in check. It keeps us grounded. It gives us perspective. And when we talk to a large language model, that is not a person. And then maybe a final way to look at it is that democracy is a kind of conversation. And when we delegate language to a system that's based on probability, what we're doing essentially is just stepping away from the table of democracy and leaving our place to a chatbot.
Thank you, Carissa. So I'm going to address you, Mike. First of all, congratulations on winning this year's Faraday Prize from the Royal Institute. This followed a long and illustrious career in the area of computer science and AI. I'm also a big fan of your book, Another Portable Magic, The Road to Conscious Machines. I think Mike told me that the publisher pushed you into accepting this title because in your view, the road to conscious machines is indeed a long and winding road. We are not there yet, and we won't be there yet anytime soon. When you accepted the award, the Faraday Prize, you gave a really insightful lecture titled, "This is not the AI we were promised." This is a very insightful commentary on where we are with AI technology. Could you please share us a few insights about what is the AI we were really promised and what is it that we are getting at the moment?
So we're in a strange period where for the first time we've got enormous numbers of people across the globe having access. You've got a web browser, you've got access to very, very powerful AI. And for all its faults, and we'll go on and talk about those, it's very, very powerful. And in people's sort of preconceptions about AI and how it works is something roughly like this. You give it a problem, it computes the answer to that problem, and then it gives you that answer. Right? That's kind of how it's going away, and it's thinking in some sense. I'm putting quote marks around that because AI people by and large don't like the word thinking of it when they talk about AI, but it's going away, it's figuring out what the answer is and giving you the answer. Now actually, there is a bit of AI that does that, but that's not what ChatGPT does at all. What ChatGPT is doing is exactly what Carissa said. What it's doing is it's basically pattern matching on extraordinary quantities of training data. And ChatGPT and the like GPT class models, the training data is essentially all of the digital text in the world. That means the whole of the World Wide Web. It means all our books because they've been pirated and fed to these machines. Every scientific report, every advertising brochure, every Twitter post, every post on Reddit, God help us, all of it goes into the training data so that when you give your prompts, it can come up with an answer. And sometimes it will be really good. So if your prompt is a one-paragraph summary of the life and achievements of Winston Churchill, it will probably be really good because in all of that training data, there will be an enormous number of paragraphs, one-paragraph summaries of the life and achievement of Winston Churchill. What it's not doing is going away and looking that data up. It is pattern matching your prompt and producing the most plausible response to that. And sometimes that plausible response will coincide with the truth, but there's no reason for it to coincide with the truth. Very often it won't coincide with the truth, but it will probably be plausible. So the point of the lecture was really to emphasize that, when you use these tools, and I do use them, I find them powerful with a huge range of caveats and cautions. They are powerful, they're useful in many, many respects, but what they're not doing is taking your problem, computing the answer to it, and then presenting that to you. They're doing a kind of weird pattern matching process that we don't fully understand. And by the way, these things are the most complex things constructed by humanity. And in a deep sense, probably no human being will ever really understand how they work because they are just too complex. So there is this weird sort of mismatch between what we think they're doing, which is kind of like, I mean, the example I used in the lecture was, we thought AI was going to be like the Star Trek computer, we thought it was going to be like Mr. Data, who's kind of annoying, but he's not as annoying as ChatGPT when it gets things wrong all the time. We thought AI was going to be kind of logical and exact and precise, and those are exactly the things that it is not. It is not those things at all. And there's another weird dimension to this, by the way, that around about 2020, somebody using one of the early models, the predecessors to ChatGPT, discovers the following. They're trying to get it to solve a problem, and then they discover that if you just put the words, let's think through this step by step, at the end of the prompt, you get a better answer. What? What? You say, let's think through this step by step, and you get a better answer? Or even better, you get an answer, and then you say, can you do better? And it does. What? The AI wasn't supposed to be, you don't go to the Star Trek computer and say, can you do better? And it does. You don't say, think through this step by step. That's not so. There is this very, very big mismatch. If you think that AI is exact and precise and logical, no, it absolutely isn't. And it is not looking things up in a database of facts or anything like that whatsoever. None of that is to say that it isn't useful or powerful, and it is genuinely remarkable where we are now compared to where it looked like we were going to be 10 years ago, but it is a very, very strange beast indeed.
So I'm just quickly pointing out to the management students here that I've never written an article with the title of Bullshit Risk Management, but AI does come up with it. So one of the big questions that people have about improving AI is that if we throw more money and more resources and more data against it, it could improve. So scale can help. So is this the reason why all these data centers are being built and all your books are being pirated away from you? And is there a scale advantage here?
So the era that we're living through, I mean, quite a lot of colleagues call it the scaling era. Mm-hmm. If you want to Google this, then what you want to Google is scaling laws for neural networks. And roughly speaking, what scaling laws tell you is that the more computer power you can throw at a neural network, the more data you can throw at it to train it, the bigger you can make the neural network. Roughly speaking, other things being equal, the more capable the AI will be. Now imagine you're a Silicon Valley executive and you want more capable AI because you want to compete, you want to get a competitive advantage. You can either A, try and hire cleverer AI researchers, or B, just throw more money, compute, and data at it. And if you do the latter, you will reliably get better AI. And in some sense, the entire last decade has been all about that, exploiting the benefits of scale. Now, the debate is very live about whether we're at the end of the scaling era. There are some reasons to believe that we must be. One is just the cost alone. So state-of-the-art models are hundreds of millions, if not billions, certainly hundreds of millions. We know this. They're at least hundreds of millions, quite possibly billions of dollars to develop, with a lifetime of 18 months, something like that, before they really become useless because they just get so out of date that nobody wants to use them anymore. So that the cost means that you can't scale up 10 times more and then scale up 10 times more after that. But also, after you've pirated all our books and you've ripped off the whole of the World Wide Web, where are you going to get 10 times more data from? And this is a very, very live challenge for these companies. There are also theories that transformers themselves, transformers are the neural networks. I'm simplifying, but apologies. I'm simplifying and I'm apologizing because I have experts in the audience that know much more about this than I do, and they're going to tell me off if I make too bad a job of it. But Transformers are the kind of neural networks that underpin large language models. And they've proved to be remarkably successful, but there are plenty of people that think this is not the way forward and that in 10 years we won't be using transformers anymore. So we could be hitting the buffers on that scaling. Do I believe that scaling is going to deliver the Silicon Valley obsession that is artificial general intelligence, AGI? Personally, no, I don't think so. I think there are other ingredients. We could talk about that or not, as you wish.
One of the other mismatches that really stares us in the face is the kind of research that you're doing here at the university about artificial intelligence looks very different from the research that's happening in Silicon Valley. I think somewhere you said that robotic AI is where we should be looking for good applications, and you have got a really sort of rosy future predicted for that area. Can you talk a little bit, like, what kind of AI research should we pursue for all of those who are interested perhaps going into this area?
Yeah,
and which other disciplines could benefit from it?
I think quite a lot of AI researchers are feeling quite bruised about what's happened in the last decade and the way that AI has been stolen by Silicon Valley. And I think there are some narratives of power that I've spoken to Carissa about in the past that, you know, if you make this AI, which you can only do if you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on doing it, then you're kind of excluding, for example, all of academia. I mean, the University of Oxford can't build a ChatGPT. We don't remotely have the resources to be able to do that. And so that means that the people that can build this technology, it's a tiny number of extraordinarily wealthy companies run by extraordinarily strange people. You know who I'm talking about, right? And the version of AI that they are promoting, AGI, and we heard Mustafa Suleyman, I think he's running AI for Microsoft. 2 weeks ago or so, he said, well, white-collar workers, you've got 18 months, 2 years tops. AI is going to replace you all after that. And that wasn't why I got into AI, and that's not why my colleagues here got into AI. I mean, some of the things that colleagues are doing, you know, they're doing assistive robotics so that elderly people can live in their homes for longer and live richer and more productive lives. That's something which AI researchers have been working on for a while. That's what gets them out of bed in the morning. You've got AI researchers that are doing automatically analyzing fetal ultrasound scans of pregnant women to identify abnormalities in the development of babies in pregnant women. And that is extraordinarily exciting. We've got researchers who think that you're going to be able to spot the onset of dementia well in advance of anybody around you spotting it from the way that you use your phone. Because, like, if you're looking up a name in a contact list, one of the classic things that people with dementia do is they start to get confused and they start to mess that. And AI can spot those kind of signals. That's, in my experience, what the overwhelming majority of the AI community are excited about. And yet the entire narrative has been stolen by Silicon Valley. And we see these prophecies like the, white-collar workers, 18 months to 2 years. We've got any white-collar workers in the audience? Do you want to come to the pub with me afterwards? These prophecies, right? That's what they are. They're exactly what you described. They're prophecies. And why are they making those prophecies? Well, in this case, they want to boost their share price, and they want to push down the share price of their competitors. So it is. Yes. It is upsetting to see this, this field that so many people were getting into because they wanted to make a better world, and having that rug pulled out under them in the way that we've seen.
But what you are saying also means that there are real entrepreneurial opportunities for the kind of social entrepreneurship that we are going to hear when people are looking for designing very specific AI for nerdy little purposes that can make life better inside organizations. So stand by for Grace and Nick joining us very soon. But I wanted to go on, thank you, Mike. I wanted to go on to Vlad. Vlad is a professor of medicine, neuroscience, brain, and you're particularly an expert on sleep, which is why I thought I'm going to ask you about what is this a wake-up call for? But seriously, I invited Vlad because I think he could talk about the physiological and psychological changes that we are going through. I'm dreading the moment my daughter might announce one day she's got an AI boyfriend. I don't think you want, neither will you, Rahel. But yeah, there are these changes. We are starting to endow certain AI agents with the kind of consciousness and personality that we find relatable, and companies are designing them as such for us. And the reason I'm asking this question is that there was a study that The Guardian cited suggesting that 30% of UK citizens have admitted that they have formed a meaningful emotional relationship with their chatbot. Is this how pathetic we've become?
Yeah. Yes, thank you for inviting me. Indeed, there is data that actually quite a significant part of us believe that AI and ChatGPT can be conscious, can be alive to some extent, can be conscious, can be sentient, which is quite striking, of course, but perhaps not surprising. And then we don't know what consciousness is, right? So actually, you started by saying that academics do not engage with emotions, right? So we can make quite far-reaching kind of conclusions from how we behave and what we say and how we respond. It is. I mean, how would you know that an entity is conscious? They would behave the way you expect, right? And this would tell you whether the entity can be alive or not. So speaking about going to sleep is as one aspect of physiology, which is of course very close to my heart. So last night I was listening to a recent interview with Sam Altman, just to refresh on what he's up to, and it was interesting to hear that he said that he didn't have a single night of good sleep since he launched ChatGPT, which is very interesting kind of revelation.
Which explains why they are so strange, these people.
Yes, indeed. And so I was at a conference just last week where there was quite an interesting new development presented where your breathing can be recorded with radio waves, and from that, scientists could generate the entire pattern of sleep. So you could generate entire spectrogram, entire hypnogram of when the subject is sleeping, is entering a specific sleep stages. So developments are really quite striking, and probably most of you wearing a device of some sort on your wrist or somewhere else that monitors some physiological parameters, and that tells you at the end how well you slept. These devices are designed to either make you feel guilty about how you sleep, or to maybe to make you feel happy, satisfied about your sleep. So if you trust what the device is telling you, then the companies that sell you the device, they exactly reach their aim. So this is just one example of how it affects physiology.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there is this other aspect of sleep that Carissa mentioned. Mm-hmm. Are these companies competing for our sleep?
Yeah, one notable quote from the CEO of Netflix a few years ago was that they weren't competing against other platforms, they were competing against people's sleep. They were trying to hijack our system. And that tells you something about how they're building the world and thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AI never gets tired. AI never sleeps. It's always with you. I think this is really an important, critical aspect of the technologies, that it's always there. So I was watching the film about Molly Russell that just came out on Channel 4.
Can we ask how many of you have seen Molly versus the Machines? It aired last week worldwide. Yeah, well, not many. So
Yeah,
can you give
yeah.
a bit of context about it?
Yes, so Molly Russell committed suicide after engaging with a very with the suicide-related content on Instagram. So
How
the
old
way,
was Molly? How old was
14.
Molly?
She was 14 years, and at some point she was a very happy girl with a happy family. At some point, maybe something changed in her life, and she started going on Instagram and looking for content about death and suicide. And of course, what happens that algorithms that monitor your engagement with the social networks, they start providing you the content about that, exactly about that point, which was very, very harmful. So she engaged with that probably for over half a year, and then one day she seemed happy in the evening. She went to bed. She closed the door of her bedroom, and then next morning she was found dead. So it's of course I recommend watching this film. It's a really dark film, not only because of this tragedy, but I also found it especially sad that it happened during the night. So this is when teenagers, they are late chronotypes. They stay late until stay late, and they don't sleep. And of course, then you very readily engage with devices, with the content, which ultimately resulted in this very.
So do we have research showing that teenagers are particularly vulnerable, and particularly they are the demographic group that loses sleep over AI?
Yes, the data, I was trying to find kind of reliable data on that, so I could not kind of cite any studies, but indeed, for teenagers, for us, AI is artificial. For teenagers, for young people, it's natural, because they're surrounded by that. They see their parents using it all the time. For them, it's very natural to go and look for answers. It's like maybe 30, 50 years ago, there were other ways to resist or to deal with your personal problems. So I think now of Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks, right? So how she was an unhappy teenager, and she would try to solve her problems with drugs or engaging in disruptive behaviors. So children now have another way to do it, and it's much easier. All you need to do is to go on the computer and device, and there you engage, and it is very addictive. It is.
Mm-hmm. So this is the area where we are reaching one of the moral low point of the AI story, because Molly Russell's father is out there on fighting a legal battle with the help of his legal team, trying to establish this new legal concept of murder by algorithm, which would enable lawyers then to go after the creators of the algorithm. By the way, in Joanna's book, there is an incident of a suicide by droid. How you have foreseen that, I have no idea, but that's another moral low point for us. I feel we need to brighten up a little bit. So we are going to hopefully turn the corner now, and I'm going to come back to you, Joanna, your new book, and I'm going to wave this as my last piece of portable magic. This is really magic. This takes you to a lovely romp of sunny and warm European places where you instantly feel better about your life. But there is AI in this as well. But somehow you managed to write a joyous book about people who are not driven to despair by computers, but somehow triumph. There is a game. I guess you should summarize this. How is AI manifest in your book, and how is it that this story is not turning into something dark and depressing?
Well, I suppose because I was thinking, what are humans in a supposedly perfected non-human system? And we are therefore an anomaly. And we're physical, and we're living in time, and we're having all these thoughts that can't be calibrated easily. And I was thinking also there's a big game going on, as we've heard, this big Silicon Valley game in which we're being invited to play a part. But we don't have to play that part. And there's a massive experiment going on in which we're being invited to be compliant experimental subjects, but we don't have to be obedient, compliant experimental subjects. And so that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to write about other games to play, in a sense, and there's a metaphor of a game, but really it was about that, about all the other things, and this idea, I kept thinking about this idea of in the gap, what happens in the gap, and how you can force that gap further and further, as you say, by just being playful, and actually a sort of political hope, because there's a lot of, in a way, if we all despair, then that could lead to lassitude and a feeling that there's no point in resisting. And so I feel that even if it feels very overwhelming, there's a necessity for this kind of determined hope somehow.
There is a fictional game which I can only imagine by thinking of something like chess and Go. I would love to play it, and probably I could if I read it more carefully. But in the story, one of the players of this game, who is frustrated by not being able to be the world champion, creates an AI that ends up beating the world champion. And then there are some unanticipated consequences. I mean, if I talk to Mike, he tells me this is a completely legitimate use of AI. You know, AI can do things that better than humans, and this is a legitimate use. And yet something awful happens.
Well, yes. I mean, I thought there's totally different reasons why an AI player plays a game and why humans play games. Yeah. And so actually in the end, not really that it's a spoiler alert, I have two AI players that just play each other endlessly, and one of them's vastly better and it just beats the other one over and over again. But the AI players don't mind. You know, they don't really mind whether they win or lose. And why do we play games? We play games, two-player games, to have fun, to engage deeply with the other player, to experience their mind, to think about what they're doing, and also to pass the time, because we're all living in time, which the AI player isn't living in time. It's not really interested in that, as it were. So I thought, in a sense, there's a completely parallel thing, again, to really force this idea that there's a total difference in these games that we're playing, and that's an important, to me, difference to observe in the game.
So if I beat the world champion of Go by using AI, I won't actually have the satisfaction of being the best player in the world.
Well,
either.
Yes, it might be a slightly hollow victory, perhaps, yes. But the AI player won't enjoy it. That's the other thing. Yeah. So then nobody really enjoys it because you don't particularly enjoy it. The human player who's beaten is having a rubbish time, and the AI doesn't really care. So, you know, it's a kind of different game that's going on.
So this raises some really interesting questions about what are the good uses of AI in society. You know, when is it that AI makes a life, you know, better? Like you study, Carissa, what a good life is. So and the second half of your book, after you outline this really dystopian emergence, in the second half of the book, you give us a lot of hopeful ideas about how to not play this game and play another game, the game of a good life. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how do we put AI in its right place?
I find myself honestly surprised at taking this stance. I think it's partly that I enjoy being a contrarian. So when everybody was very optimistic about tech, I was like, yeah, this is a terrible idea. And now that things are turning quite gloomy, I'm finding myself looking for rays of sunlight in neglected corners, but that are still there. So bringing it back a little bit to business, given that we're in a business school, one of the recommendations I would give after thinking about this topic for years would be to focus much less on predicting and much more on things like scenario planning. And one of the reasons I am so overjoyed of having artists in the panel is because artists help us imagine better futures. We cannot possibly build a better future if we can't even imagine it. And it's not about being optimistic in the sense that if you make a prediction, then it will become true. That's not the way it works. But it's about having more integrity and being more solid when we listen to very gloomy predictions of saying, okay, this is something that could happen. I don't want that to happen. What am I going to do to make sure that that prediction doesn't come true? how am I going to help write the future that I would like to live in and that I would like my children and my friends and my family and community to live in? And it's partly about harnessing the power of self-fulfilling prophecies in a positive way, because predictions are all over the place. And I would venture to say that it's the main mechanism through which we make decisions today, which makes it quite a powerful mechanism. So for example, if you want to have this conversation, and it's everywhere, it's even in books. So if you pre-order a book, it has much more of an effect than if you order it once the book is out. Why? Because if you pre-order it, the publisher says like, people are interested in this. So they print more copies, and once they're stuck with the copies, they actually do the work to sell the copies. And so everything has this cycle that it can be vicious or it can be virtuous. Mm-hmm. And the second place where I really find hope is in the analog. We tend to forget, when we focus so much on the digital and so much on AI, that everything virtual depends on the analog, on the chunky things that you can see and smell and experience. And particularly with businesses, I'm finding that they are forgetting the asset that is the real world and the world of old school manual things. So companies are forgetting how to run a ship without AI. And when AI fails, either because we have a solar storm and we don't have electricity, or there's a blackout like happened in Spain not too long ago, or because geopolitics gets tricky, then we can't run our own companies anymore. And that makes us incredibly brittle, not only as business people, but also as a society. So I advise the Spanish government on these matters, and one thing that was very interesting to hear about was their experience with the blackout that happened a few months ago. And all kinds of things happened that shouldn't have happened and we should have foreseen. But just to give an example, it turns out that many oxygen tanks now are digital, which they don't need to be. And so suddenly you had the need for dozens of health professionals to go to people's homes and make sure that they had enough energy for their oxygen tank to work. And these people got into the ambulances, and most of them are young, and it turns out they had never navigated the city without Google Maps. And this was a huge problem. Mm-hmm. So we should go home, in a sense. There's this novel that novelist wrote about the blue flower, and the main character goes around the world obsessed with this blue flower, and at the end of the story finds it right in front of his home when he returns. And it's a bit like that. We've gone through a lot of scenarios of gloom and doom. We've met very weird characters that lead these companies, and we've dreamt about dystopia, and it's time to go home, back to the analog in some ways.
Thank you. On that note, I would like to invite the two social entrepreneurs among us, Grace Tsai and Nick. Where are you, Nick Amidou? And yes, we're going to swap out our two artists. Thank you very much, both of you. So, yeah, Nick, Andreou, and Grace Tsai, thank you very much for joining us. You are both alumni of SCOL, and we are very, very pleased to have you back, both of you. And we would love to hear about your journeys and how you found meaning and purpose and pro-social applications in the world of AI. Shall we start with you, Grace?
It's great to be back here. I was a student, MBA student back in 2009-10, so it's 16 years now. I'm the co-founder of Unravel Carbon. We're a climate tech AI company. Check us out. So what it means is we combine humans and compute to help some of the world's largest enterprises to reduce their carbon emissions and to prepare for climate risk and opportunities. For me, being a SCOL scholar as well, I am not able to start companies that does not have a social or environmental good, right? So for forever and eternity, I would always combine business models with an extra business mission, right? Because, making money alone is not that exciting. So in the realm of AI, I don't think we've been set up to be liked tonight, I feel.
No, you are a different kind of AI entrepreneur. So
we're
tell
going to
us
sit
if
with
you
each
want-
other during dinner. Nobody will sit with us.
So you can tell us about, the AIs that you're using are not the same AIs that we've been seeing as predictive algorithms that make money out of the accuracy of their predictions. There are different uses.
Yeah. So for context, I'm not a technical founder running a very technical company. Both climate science and data science are very technical, and how we apply that. We're known in the world to always be pushing the use of AI onto climate, okay? So that's the context. So in the realm of AI, there is a subset called Gen AI, right? This is generative AI that is able to learn, reflect on its own mistakes, and generate better outcomes. Within Gen AI, there is another subset called agentic AI. So this is where the AI agents come from, right? We have built about 7 AI agents on top of Anthropic Claude Sonnet model. So we don't train our own models because you will need a lot of gazillion dollars on it, and it's also not good for the environment. So we built on top of Anthropic Claude Sonnet model, 7 AI agents. An example would be, IKEA is one of our customers. How many of you have the Billy bookcase at home, or at some point when you were poor, you know?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, okay, I had a Billy bookcase in white. The Billy bookcase has been around for a long time. It's the most sold bookcase on the planet. When the IKEA team used our product carbon footprint agent, it was able to identify 62% reduced carbon, solutions to reduce 62% of the Billy bookcase itself.
Carbon emissions.
Carbon emissions, okay. So traditionally, those of you who work for the Big Four, I apologize in advance. When a company wants to study the product carbon footprint of a thing or a service, they would hire one of the Big Four, or Deloitte or KPMG. These consultants would charge them at least $150,000. They wouldn't wake up for anything less. And it would take them 8 months to generate the product carbon footprint report of any product. My AI agent takes 10 minutes. Okay, so that's how we are trying to move the needle. How do we inform CEOs, CFOs, CSOs, designers, researchers to build for a better, greener world with AI, with AI's help?
One of the things Grace did yesterday, very kindly, she spent an hour and a half with me and showed me how her agent works in the space of carbon accounting. I don't imagine there are too many people who get excited about accounting. It's a very nerdy topic where a very nerdy AI can do really good things. But that assumes that this nerdy AI can actually double-check data. It can check data numbers against databases or Excel sheets and so on. So I wanted to go back to Mike and say what we're starting to see is people not just relying on large language models, but trying to find some kind of audit capability so that their AI agents don't hallucinate and make things up, but check them. Is this a promising area of development?
Yeah, it's a promising area of development. I mean, again, if you want to Google it, talk about AI tools. That's the thing. If you need to do a calculation or something like that, instead of having the model try to do it, the model just calls out for somebody to solve the problem for it, and you then invoke the corresponding tool for that. And it is actually, I mean, really down at the level of arithmetic. These large language models are designed to do prediction of words. They're not designed to do arithmetic. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of startling how bad they were at arithmetic, how incredibly fluent they could be at arithmetic and how English, but how spectacularly bad they could be at arithmetic. So yeah, that's one way forward. The other way forward that people are looking at is what's called retrieval augmented generation, which is that when you're producing a prompt, you are in some sense checking the response that you're producing against some kind of ground truth. Those are things that people are looking at, but they're these are far from finished problems. I mean, one of the startling things which never ceases to amaze me is just how one moment you can really be amazed at a response that you get, and then how spectacularly stupid it can seem the very next moment. And it's very, very, very hard to get your head around it.
Mm-hmm. So I think what Grace's company is doing is your engineers are trying to find this audit facility. So your AI, if we ask how many R's are there in the word strawberry, as your famous example suggests, AI would say there are exactly 2 R's in the word strawberry, but your AI would find a third R as well.
If I can add something, the strength of large language models, LLMs, is in its probabilistic nature. It's very good at finding a lot of data, but it's very probabilistic in nature. Now, most of our customers are listed. They need to be audited. Mm-hmm. We cannot give them probabilistic agents. It has to be deterministic, because audit trails happen, and every output you need to trace back to what caused that output, right? So my team of 35 people, not a very big team, but we have the best AI engineers, machine learning engineers, software programmers, climate scientists, and their job is to set the guardrails for each use case and design scaffoldings and knowledge graphs to keep it tight, to make it as deterministic as possible, mm-hmm. And therefore harnessing the strengths of LLMs without giving way to some of the weaknesses. And that's why you see, in AI, there are 3 layers, right? There's the infrastructure layer. These are the people building data centers. There's the model builders, right? You have Llama, you have Nova, you have Gemini at Google, Mistral in France, right? And then we belong in the application layer. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole rise of application layer. Amongst, if in this room there are people who are thinking of being a tech founder, don't build SaaS anymore, okay? Mm-hmm. Just go straight to building agentic platforms.
Yes, Mike, you wanted to come back.
Very briefly. I mean, I think it's healthy to remind yourself every week just how, in some ways, spectacularly dumb this technology is. And so the best example I saw this week, and apologies to those that already saw it, is somebody posed the following problem to a large language model. I put 2 bunnies in a cage, and a year later, I take 5 bunnies out of the cage. How many bunnies are in the cage? And this model said -3 bunnies are in the cage. And the point of this is, you all understand, so a couple of people are still puzzling over that. I mean, your mum and dad should have had the conversation with you. But the point is, what it is not doing is understanding in any conventional sense. And that doesn't mean it's not useful and so on. But sorry, I'm harping on. I could give you many more of those examples. They're very funny, but I love that one.
Yeah, I still like Grace's nerdy accounting agent that just looks at the accounting standards and then looks at what the companies are saying about their carbon emissions and then makes some comparisons and gap analysis. It's a very specific application. And that is really, one of the lessons I'm taking away from you, Grace, is that we need a lot of humility to give a very specific task to the agent and not claim that this agent can solve all strategic problems of this company in the sustainability space.
So there's a concept called human in the loop, okay? That's a very important concept. Nobody's going out of jobs, okay? Basically, these AI agents and AI, mm-hmm. they're like an intern, okay? They're like an analyst. The work that come out from that team is as good as the manager, right? These interns and analysts are given like dog task kind of stuff, right? Make slides or, analyze this model. And then it's the manager who would take that work to present to the board, let's say. Mm-hmm. AI is the same, right? They can propose things, but it's the human who receives and accepts the result or not, mm-hmm. okay? And to free up the time from these mundane, repetitive things to be strategic, right? So I want to draw that parallel. The difference, though, is that these AI agents do not complain. They do not need to work from home. They speak 70, 80 languages. They work 24/7, right? And therefore, there's a lot of benefit in my sector because most sustainability teams are really small. They are, all these large company brand names, they have 3 to 10 people in sustainability teams. And these are the people that are expected to halve our global emissions by 2030, okay? And 10 months of a year, they are struggling with just data issues. collecting data, transforming data, cleaning data, validating data. It's no fun to be a sustainability professional when you're like struggling with these basic things, right? So what we're seeing now is that instead of spending 10 months in a year struggling with these things, it's now shortened to 10 days. So now this, to me, AI reminds us, when applied well, it reminds us on what it is to be humans. It brings back the freedom to think and imagine and lead and create better versions of business and in society, because you are free from the tasks that were holding you down, right? So the whole time to think, the space to think, to reflect, to imagine is what's starting to come back amongst the people we serve.
Okay, thank you, Grace. We're going on to next. So can you tell us about your AI journey and social entrepreneurship?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm the head of AI at a impact investing fund called Better Society Capital. We've committed roughly 1 billion to the impact investing ecosystem in the UK across, we're a fund of funds, so we invest in funds that then invest in organizations, whether that's charities, social enterprises, companies, and so on. So I started out as an academic. I have a PhD in applied psychology. I then worked in international development, then on the investment team of this organization, and then finally is in this head of AI position. And the rationale from the board and the senior management was they wanted somebody that kind of understood the core values of the company and what the company did to be leading how we adopt these technologies. And my slightly biased opinion is they made the right choice in thinking about that. Because you could take somebody that's very excited about the technologies and point it in ways that are not helpful or not as helpful as someone that deeply understood the business and what we were trying to do. So when we think about AI, it's a tool, and a tool can help you to do your mission faster, better, and so on. And so for existing companies, it's how do you use that tool to achieve your mission. For entrepreneurs and founders that want to start companies, it's what can you now create with these technologies that wasn't there before. We have roughly 100 AI startups in our portfolio. So I'll give you an example of what we're doing and how we're thinking about this, and an example from one of the companies in our portfolios. So we began our journey in AI by getting one of these very expensive consulting companies to come in and do some analysis for us. Thankfully, they did it pro bono, but we still got the 150-page deck with all of the possible things that we could do. And this was a very top-down view. It's sort of what's the most strategic thing that we could do with this technology. And so sort of senior people in the organization looked at it, we agreed, and we started to go ahead and build these things. And then what we realized is we needed the people that do these tasks that we were looking to use the AI for to tell us how they do them, to tell us what good looks like, and so on. And it turns out when you try to build something that automates a part of a job that someone really enjoys, they don't answer your emails about how to build the thing that will take the thing that they enjoy doing away from them. So we stopped taking a very top-down approach, and we started thinking bottom-up as well. So we ask ourselves questions like, which parts of people's jobs do they want us to bring AI into? And the way I package that is we are trying to bring more joy to people's jobs. Where do we think there is value in adding something on top of what the human is doing? And how can we elevate the role of the human in this system that is the work that's trying to be done? So I'll give you an example. Impact assessment is something that's very important to us. It's how we decide where we allocate money. In the same way that you have financial assessment, we have impact assessment. And this is a very laborious thing to do. It needs a lot of research, data, and so on. And we asked ourselves the question, could AI do this faster, better, more effectively, and so on? So I set out on this experimental journey with a prompt of roughly 10 lines. When we got to the end of this journey, that prompt was 212 lines long. That's how much context we had to give it to tell it to not make up numbers, not hallucinate, and all these sorts of things. And then part of this assessment is a number. It's a series of numbers, a rating scale, essentially. So now we can actually audit the model and say, how good is it doing this impact assessment thing? So what we did is we got our teams to do the impact assessment, as they normally would, and then we got the AI to do it, and now we could compare those two sets of scores. But we wanted a sense of what is the truth here. And so what we did is wherever there is a difference in scores, we got a group of us together with all the information, and we made a final judgment. And that was going to be our truth. So we could say, what was the degree of congruence between the original human scores and that final set and the original AI scores and the final set? Who thinks the humans did better? 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, okay. Who thinks the AI did better? Okay, most people, and there's some that we've lost, clearly, because their hands didn't go up. Anyway, so yes, so the humans were congruent 64% of the time, and the AI was congruent 81% of the time. Now, that's not a perfect experiment. We're not saying that the AI does it better than the humans do it, and so on, but what that tells us is this is a valuable application of this technology. And then we go to the, how does this elevate the role of the human? Well, instead of writing the reports, they're now auditing the reports. They're thinking about comparisons in the portfolio. They're thinking about what are the opportunities that we can give to these companies and funds to do more in terms of impact creation and so on. This is much more strategically valuable work, and it's what the team prefers to do and enjoys doing. So that's, we think, a good application of some of this stuff. It helps accelerate our impact. Very quickly, I'll give you a startup example. So there was a company in our portfolio called Ophelos. One of the founders is Amon. I had a few conversations with him along his journey. He's a very kind of big picture thinker, and the way he structured this problem was to say, credit is a remarkably useful tool for helping people improve their quality of life. Yet as a society, we have said, in terms of business models, we have said we're going to look to identify those people who need this product the most, but because they are the most risky, we will systematically take this product away from them to protect our margins and so on. And his whole thing was, how do we flip this? How do we create technology that means we are more likely to lend to those people than to not lend to those people? So he spent a bunch of time with those people and basically came to 3 insights that led to their product. So the first insight was that very often there's this assumption that these people are deliberately trying to game the system. And he said that's not true. These people want to repay their loans. They want to be, seen as trustworthy and so on. So it's not a motivation problem. The second thing that they landed on was that this isn't even an ability to pay problem. So they often have the ability to pay, but what they don't have is the ability to pay the same amount on the same day every month until they repay the loan. And that is because they are seasonal workers, because they have caring needs, so on and so forth. So the third key insight was, if we can find a way to create 100,000 unique repayment plans for 100,000 unique individuals, we solve this problem. And it turns out that AI technologies are remarkably good at doing that very efficiently. So the product is currently a chatbot. It asks you about your life, it learns about you, and then it passes that information to a recommendation engine, which then says, give this back to the user and ask them if they are happy with this plan. If they're happy, great. If they're not happy, it goes again. And in their early, I think it was their first or second client, they started with retail credit. So if you're buying a fridge or clothes or whatever, and you need credit to do that, that was this client. And they had 14 debt collection agencies that were trying to recover debt. And in came Ophelos. And so they now could directly compare their success with the other agencies. Does anyone want to guess how much better Ophelos was than the best alternative out there? And I've seen some students here that I've taught this case study to, so you are not allowed to answer. Have a guess. 10. Bold. I like it. Any other takers? 20 times. Almost the perfect average of those. It was 14 times better than the next best alternative. So we are delivering impact through AI.
So the impact is that you're enabling people to take loans who otherwise wouldn't get it.
Exactly. You are de-risking that group, so you can now move more capital towards them, and they can use that to improve their quality of life. So yeah, we absolutely think that there are applications of these technologies that deliver impact, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find them, accelerate them, fund them, and so on.
Okay. So the question that I have, and I think the panel would be the right panel to discuss it, is, as we are starting to see AI teammates, my question from a managerial perspective is, actually, why don't I quote you an extract from a syllabus from the Harvard Business School? Like, really, the question is around what's happening to companies, to us, when our team workers are AI. as AI matures, the very definition of the workforce is expanding. Organizations are no longer relying solely on human talent. AI agents are becoming digital teammates capable of handling tasks once thought beyond automation. So in your areas of work, my question is like, what can go wrong with teammates who are AI? What do we have to do differently as managers and team players? Anyone?
Okay,
Yes.
First of all, here's a startup idea for anyone who wants to do something. Create a new LinkedIn for agents, right? Because each of these agents should have their own persona, their rates and capabilities and so on, their own CVs essentially, okay? Because the world would be humans and agents.
The agents are interfering.
Where's the AI to help with mic interview? Okay, so the future in our view would be, humans and agents together working in teams, but also agents and agents working together between organizations and teams, okay? To me, in my view, it's inevitable that that's gonna happen. Companies like PwC are already building operating systems for their agents to work with external agents. And we're going to be like the first sustainability AI agent on AWS's operating system for agents. So it's just to say that future is inevitable. The second thing to say is...
The question, can I just stop you, Grace? Because I just feel like maybe the question is, are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with the enthusiasm? Mike, I think you wrote about what happens where agents work with agents, and then what will happen to that loop? What is the likely outcome? Because we don't know what the computer science would tell you, Grace, about if you suddenly populate your teams with agents interacting with other agents.
I find it easy. I find it easy to envisage the idea of agents carrying out specific tasks. And I think that's something that can be sort of automated by AI for certain tasks. I'm not so confident about the idea of the Mustafa Suleyman vision that you're all going to be, out of a job in 18 months, because a human role is more than just a collection of tasks. I mean, I don't think you could replicate me just by training an AI on my email messages and Slack messages and so on. I mean, because my role is much more than that. So the vision, it's not a new vision. I mean, actually, I've worked on multi-agent systems for more than 30 years. That's my core research area. It's not a new vision, the idea of an agentic organization. But what I would see is agents that do specific tasks rather than complete roles. So I would be surprised if that prophecy of Mustafa Suleyman came out true. If that's any reassurance.
Yeah, so you're saying, Grace, keep your nerdy agent nerdy and deterministic, and don't cultivate it as a LinkedIn persona.
Yeah, it's not as dramatic as it sounds.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example, okay? We have a data collection agent that collects data from suppliers, let's say, of the IKEA supply chain, right? After it collects, we have a data validation agent that verifies that data. That's already an agent and agent collaboration. Because normally that would be an intern and intern, or within the intern, without a work-life balance doing everything, right? So, and then there's a third agent that comes and check everything else. So it's not as, Black Mirror as one would.
And you still need your sustainability professional on the team there. Carissa, I want to come back to what are you thinking as you listen to our well-intended social entrepreneurs using AI? If you were on their ethics committee, what advice would you give them? We want you to succeed, guys, but from a ethical philosophy point of view, what should they be also thinking about?
That's a great question. So first, I would be very wary of saying that any future is inevitable. Because you can see how it works as a magnet, right? When you tell someone, this future is inevitable, you're saying, don't ask any questions, just obey. Businesses, this is what you have to do. And what I would like to foster is a culture of exactly the opposite, is what are we going to do? What kind of agents do we want? What kind of future do we envision? But on the bright side, I think these are two excellent examples of how we can use AI for better. And there are applications. And this is, instead of caving into the gloominess of it and prophecies like that of Mustafa Suleyman, about whom I have many thoughts I won't voice, we should say, part of what Mike is saying when he gives us all these hilarious examples is this is a shoddy product. And what do you do when you have a shoddy product? It means that it's an incredible business opportunity, right? Because we deserve better technology that is, much more, is that working? No, that's not working. The button is pressed.
People at the back, can you hear Carissa?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, thank you.
All right. So it's an incredible business opportunity. This product is not good enough, and we deserve AI that is more precise, that is more safe. And one of the lessons to be learned from this panel, I think, is that we need to get out of big tech. We really do. Big tech has a role, and it has some interesting products, and I'm not saying you can't use it at all, but the business opportunity here is how do we use AI in ways that make us more autonomous, not more dependent on companies that have proven themselves to be incredibly untrustworthy at a moment of geopolitics in which there is more and more uncertainty about the future, and how innovation is going to come from people in this room. It's not going to come from government. We rely on you to think of better futures, to be more ambitious about technology, and to contribute, not only because it's an incredible business opportunity, but because it's also an incredible opportunity to contribute to democracy. One of the things I think we have lost in the corporate culture is the sense of companies as being good citizens, as contributing to stability, to innovation, to safety, and this idea that a company is only beholden to its stockholders is incredibly recent. And yes, it's very profitable in the short term, but one of the reasons why I love working with family companies is because they tend to have a longer horizon. And I think that if we want to be good citizens, that's the kind of horizon we should have. And final lesson is, I think Mike would probably agree on this, that just said, you just said so in different words, is that task-specific AI tends to be much more reliable and useful than dystopic imaginings.
So you're okay. Tell your engineers they are going in the right direction. Nick, what are your thoughts? Just, we are closing, so it'd be interesting to hear what are you taking away from this panel. And again, good uses of AI exist. How do we differentiate those good uses from the less ethical, less responsible ones?
I think that question is quite simple, actually. If you're building something, if you're investing in something, if you're thinking about something, do you want your child to be using that thing? That's normally a pretty good sense check on whether it's value positive or value negative. Can I make an observation about something that we haven't talked about? So we've talked a lot about tech companies, and we've talked a lot about government. We haven't talked about this thing that lives in between those, which is the investors, which is where we spend a lot of our time. And I think the biggest problem here is that where these AI companies have to get their money from, they have a very particular set of incentives that pushes them very far away from the types of AI that we want and the type of society that we want and so on. And I'll just very briefly, quick summary of what has happened with the OpenAI journey, because I think it's illustrative of how damaging it is when you get the wrong incentives pointing at very uncertain technologies. So OpenAI, created in 2015, not-for-profit, fiduciary duty for the benefit of society or something like that. That was written in. In 2019, they decided that they could no longer raise capital at the amounts that was needed from purely philanthropic places, and so they converted to this kind of hybrid structure that had a capped amount of profit that investors could make, that they could make, and so on. The cap was 100 times. Microsoft went in at that round with $1 billion. That was in 2019. 2 months after that happened, Sam Altman was asked, how are you going to make money from this huge probability matrix that you're building of all of the world's information? And this is on YouTube, you can go and check it. He said, we don't know, but we're trying to build something so clever, we could ask it that question, and it will tell us how to make money. And the audience did what you did, they laughed, right? But that's essentially what they did. They made something that is intelligent and you can talk to. So they were working on all of these models. And then in November 2022, they put a chat interface on top of that model. And this was the first time that you could chat in a normal way to some of these AI technologies. Within, I think, 5 days, they had 1 million people using this. This was a beta. They were putting it out into the world to figure out what the risks were with increased usage and so on. Now, they've just raised capital from VCs, big tech, and so on. So the how do we make money question is now very important, because if they want to continue to raise money, they have to show that that initial money that they raised is leading to growth and engagement and so on. So 3 months after that launch of ChatGPT, they put a $20 per month price tag on that product. Within 2 months, it had reached 100 million users. It took Facebook 4 years to hit that same number. Now, we have no idea whether that would have been the journey if they hadn't taken VC money. 2 months after they took that money, when Sam Altman was asked, how are you going to make money? He said, we have no idea, we're going to ask an AI. That's how basic the thinking was in terms of revenue model, business model, and all of that kind of stuff. And then suddenly, from a beta that was put out, that you got product market fit by accident, they saw the opportunity, they put a price tag on it, and the rest is kind of history. There was another incident, this is the last thing I'll say. I think it was 23, Sam Altman was voted out by the board because he was violating this for-purpose mission that they had. And you had a revolt from the investors and from the employees. Now, I was very curious about the employee thing, but here's the key thing. In startup land, because startups don't have a lot of money, they remunerate talent with equity, with shares in the company. So if your CEO is kicked out by the board and those share prices tank, your remuneration also tanks. So you had investors that are only motivated by what is the share price of this company, and you have employees who are largely motivated by what is the share price of this company, and that directs the strategic future of OpenAI, which in the last couple of weeks we've seen how damaging that can be. And my thesis would be we need a better set of incentives pointing at the development of these technologies, and that's one of the things that we are trying to do. What does that financial system look like with the right incentives to get the best out of these technologies for society?
Yes, I'm afraid we're not going to solve that problem in the remaining 20 minutes, but it's a very good question to leave with everyone. So what are the incentives that would maintain a more ethical orientation? And social impact isn't just about maximizing profit, or primarily not. Okay, shall we open it up? Yes, there's so many questions. Do we have someone who can run around with a roaming microphone? And can we just have Joanna back on the stage? Yeah. Okay, sorry, your hand went up like a shot, so can we pass in the microphone from this side? Joanna, do you want to come back? Yes, and Maya, you're very welcome to jump up. You can all take questions. Maya, I'll get you a chair. Okay, so any of our panelists would be very happy to answer. Come back. Yeah. Right.
Thank you so much. That's incredibly, that's absolutely fascinating. I started a number of businesses this year. I've co-founded 2 businesses and founded 2 businesses. Spent the last 8.5 years as a lawyer before that. And they have a big AI element in those businesses. I think it would be disingenuous of me to say that the businesses I am building aren't going to displace people from jobs. And Grace, I think the business you're building sounds absolutely brilliant. I think what you're doing is great, but it seems clear to me from the example you gave that those employees in the big 4 organizations, their jobs are going to go. Like, if they're not getting out of bed for 150K, and your tooling can do that in 10 minutes at, I expect, a very much lower price point, those teams are going to be displaced. In addition, the people, if a team of 10 people in that organization are looking at sustainability and they're spending 10 months of the year doing the piece that your product solves in 10 minutes, which I think is great, it's a really important point. From a overheads perspective, is that organization going to maintain a team of 10 people to do that?
Yeah. So when Excel sheets came out, did it elevate people or did it cut jobs? Right? I think what the Big Four is already doing is they're adapting to that one version of that future. Right? They are, and you know, they are also hiring more people to adapt to that future. So I think it's very simplistic to say what jobs, you know, that it will remove jobs and so on. There are decisions done by big tech, like Block, who, you know, was in the extreme end where they cut 40%. But we also see a lot more companies hiring more people, augmenting jobs differently, and so on. I do think that the rank of jobs that are most at risk is the junior level. That I do think, and I do see that happening in sectors where these junior band of people are doing tasks that are repetitive and you know, dealing with a lot of data, coding, legal, and analysts and things like that.
Thank you. Would you like to pass the mic on to the gentleman next to you so other people can get in the conversation? Go on.
Right, are we moving on? Chiefly for Mike, but for anyone, Anthropic might be thought one of the more moral of the Big Four companies, but has been heavily criticized, but for example, by Louisa Jarofsky for talking in a very anthropomorphic, that's to say, attributing human qualities about their models. Would you suggest that that is a socially irresponsible way of talking about the product by giving it, talking it as though it had human understanding and human feelings?
You're not a solicitor or something, because that sounded like a very legal question.
Amateur philosopher.
I completely, sorry. Okay. Yeah, not sure if I got the mic. I rather agree. I mean, we were talking about, you know, with the Star Trek computer earlier on. I mean, if you remember, the Star Trek computer always spoke like this. You were never under the impression that it was a human being. You know, and Mr. Data, despite his best attempts to appear like a human being, never succeeded in that. And actually, I think there is something in that. I think we need to be reminded that these things are they're not sentient. I don't see that anytime soon. I think that's absolutely the wrong way to think about them. And so I think presenting them as ever more human-like, I think personally is a mistake for all sorts of reasons. So,
would anyone else like to add something, Joanna?
Sorry, yes, Carissa.
Just very quickly, I wrote a paper about how we shouldn't allow chatbots to use emojis, and I think I didn't go far enough. I think we shouldn't allow them to use the pronoun I. There's no one there, and it hijacks our emotional responses.
So they should say the machine.
Yeah, or something else, or just speak in the third person, in a different third person.
Oh, let's see what the creatives think about it.
The point about Anthropic, and it's applied to other LLMs as well, but there was a legal case where writers took a case against Anthropic for taking work without observing copyright. And the defense was so interesting because there was this defense that the LLM was like a reader, and it was reading and being inspired. And so it was fair use. And so again, exactly that question. And just in terms of the tech as well, we deserve this tech that exactly is transparent about what it is. It's so important. It's such an important, fascinating area. And I heard someone talking about this case, one of the really big tech person from really, you know, one of the Big Four, and he said, we're democratizing knowledge. I don't know why these annoying Luddite writers got so annoyed about, you know, their stuff. We're democratizing knowledge. And the riposte came from one of my colleagues who, she said, why don't you democratize profit then as well? Which didn't, you know.
Incentives. Yeah. Behind you, the lady behind you, thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a question. We've talked about business. Of course, we're in a business school. And we've touched a little bit on social impact. And so in the spirit of that, I wanted to ask, in a world of of sort of state capture in some regards, right? Rising authoritarianism, the proximity between the big tech sector and governance, particularly in the US, for example, right, is narrowing rapidly, if not already overlapping. I wanted to ask, what is the role of the social sector and civil sector organizations now in this landscape, particularly amidst all of the distrust of institutions?
Okay, civil sector?
Quickly, I do think what is lacking in this whole AI revolution is regulation. Okay, if you think about modes of transportation, which is the safest mode of travel? Aircraft, aviation, right? 1 in 11 million flights, you will die. Whereas on the plane is like 100 times less. And that's because aviation is the most regulated mode of transportation ever. I do think we lack that, but the question is who is supposed to regulate, right? Traditionally, all these a lot of these impactful technologies were from government, whether it's GPS or aviation. So the government knew better, and they could regulate something they understood. But with AI, it is these big tech companies relying on ethical leaders that are not proving themselves to be, right? And so maybe the role of society and the civic society is to put the guardrails around better regulation across all three levels, the infrastructure, the model builders, and the application layer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Mike?
Yeah, we were on a panel together recently, and somebody made the following observation, which really struck me. You want to open a sandwich shop on the high street, you're going to be subject to far more regulation than if you want to start an AI company and build AGI. And that's kind of remarkable that that's the position that society finds itself in.
So again, this is an issue of incentives too, because what has happened, I think if Carissa would tell us, the AI companies captured government. Right? That is the reason why the government is quite willing to give them a benign environment. Carissa, I know you talk a lot about this, but do you want to sum up your thoughts?
I completely agree with both of those comments. And just as a reminder, profits have always been in the courts of kings and power. We are seeing the new Rasputins. However, we are in a business school, and even though there are historical instances in which government regulates companies or an industry does better, you also have the opposite effect, in which one company ups the game and innovates, and everybody follows, and then the government says, oh yeah, we should regulate that. But really, they were followers. And so one example is, you wouldn't think about McDonald's as the most ethical company in the world, but actually they came up with larger cages for chickens, and then everybody else followed, and regulation followed. And encryption is another example. When Signal began encrypting messages, then other companies followed. So yes, we do need better regulation, but we also shouldn't just sit and wait.
So we need good actors too, who raise the standards for the whole industry. Yeah. So there lies your responsibility, Grace and Nick. It's a big ask from civil society, but thank you. Question, Thomas? Yes, yeah. Go on, Thomas. There's a mic coming at you.
For the speech or discussion, I very much enjoyed it. I suppose I've heard various descriptions of AI used. There's been tool, teammate, intern, and I guess how should we think of it?
Okay, so now you have a question from the next generation, and we have a big responsibility in answering. So what is in it for someone who is still coming through secondary school and loses sleep over not finding jobs by the time they finish university?
I mean, I think the hard part about this AI thing is it's so unclear what the future is. We are onboarding a new AI tool across the entire organization. In the 2 weeks to the point of onboarding, they changed their policy and terms and pricing that led to 8 updates, major updates to the paper. And that was in 2 weeks. And my board thought we weren't doing our homework properly, when actually that's the pace of change that currently exists. And so I think it's much more a how question than a what question. So what we're working on is the mindset of our team and how they approach these technologies. So be curious, be playful, be proactive, figure out how you can use them, how they can add value, where the risks are, where the potential errors are, and so on. And if you're doing that and staying kind of at the frontier, that's more likely, we think, for our team and the next generation and so on to land in a good place vis-a-vis these technologies. Because trying to call it either way is impossible. You have Nobel Prize winners on either side arguing, and if they don't know, well, I don't know. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Nigel, Thomas, can you send that microphone back to Nigel? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for a really interesting discussion. I just wanted to pick up on the repeated denigration of weirdness. I want to speak up for strange people who are usually the source of progress. I mean, this is in the spirit of John Stuart Mill, who thought that the outsiders, the people who are deemed to be strange, are actually the ones that bring about progress. The problem is surely that not all weird people are geniuses, although most geniuses are weird. And amongst those weird people who have power, there are some highly immoral people. And those, even amongst them, some of them are geniuses. And that's a really scary thing. Is that right? It's not. So in a way, are you right to just pick on the weirdness of CEOs of tech companies? Because that seems unfair. It's not the weirdness that's causing the problems.
And then there's a wrong kind of weird. Now, I completely take your point, and I think you're absolutely right. But even among geniuses, so there might be types of geniuses that you still wouldn't want them to be in charge of certain kinds of decisions. And so I think one of the problems that we're facing is that we are seeing essentially social and ecological and political problems and thinking that it might have all the same solution, AI, and that's the wrong approach. And there are certain kinds of people who have a lot of power who are weird in that sense of thinking that AI is the solution to everything. And it just happens to be the case that they get very, very rich every time that we try to implement that solution.
Can I just add, I think it's deeply problematic that that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Is basically 100 people. How weird are they? How genius are they? How immoral are they? I think that's the problem. This needs to be a more consensus-based thing of how we develop and deploy these technologies. And that's the point I was making with the incentives, right? All these structures are wrong. And we need to get to a place where we can have a conversation as a society about what we want this stuff to do. And then make sure that is the way that we do it, not people's weird or unweird dreams.
Okay, I think we're just going to collect a couple of more questions. And so there is one, Anya, and you at the back. Sorry, I can't see you. The lady who is holding her hands up consistently for about 5 minutes. Yes. Just state your question and then we pull them.
Yeah, I'm in medical area and in education. And my question is, what is our responsibility for the newer generations in terms of things like suicide and anxiety and depression when using these tools? In healthcare, we use it to help patients to understand complex medical language. But I just wonder what is our responsibility when using AI to translate or to use it as a linguistic tool?
Okay, responsibility in medical. Anya, state your question.
We have mentioned several times about the possibility of job loss among certain sectors. And while we speak freely about the value added of the work done by AI, I wanted to hear your opinions about the values of, say, those entry-level jobs. What exactly is achieved in their doing? A lot of the time, transcription and these kind of practical, repetitive tasks are being devalued in the implementation of AI, but what are their values? What is the value of going back to the physical that Carissa talked about, and what exactly is the value lost by automating?
Thank you, Anya. And Caroline, I think, the back. Could we send a microphone to the lady in the white jacket? Yeah. Thank you.
We've heard so much today about AI in a business context and when it's bad for AI to make things up or hallucinate. One of the great things about the Oxford Ministry for the Future events is putting the humanities and the arts lens on some of these issues. I would love to hear a little bit more from Maya about what the role of AI in the arts, and particularly the visual arts, might be, where being creative, making things up, hallucinating could be a positive thing, and how we use AI to amplify human creativity without descending into a load of six-finger slop.
Okay, so let's hold these questions in mind. Maya, you've been called out, so we're going to go to you first, and then responsibility and returning to the analog, anyone could deal with that. But Maya, that is your question. You can just speak, I think.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have to say I'm quite lining with the thing that when it comes to visual arts, like AI is an offense to life to an extent. But the thing is, I'm a visual artist, and I do use AI as an aid, for example, to create an animation, for example. So it's there to help me kind of make the animation more easily, but it's not part of the storytelling. The storytelling comes from people. We communicate through storytelling. That's people's job. AI will not be good in that. And yeah, it's a tool to help, but it's not the one who creates.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to echo this in response to the question about the medical professional use and the analog? Go ahead. Grace and Carissa.
Fun fact, I'm not a doctor, but you know what is the top use of ChatGPT in 2023 to 2024? Any idea?
Asking about symptoms?
Therapy.
Therapy, yeah.
Yeah, therapy and companionship. That was the #1 use of ChatGPT, and #2 was like writing and something, and then #3 is studying and something, right? So like that is already very obvious, but you know there is a boundary to that. There was this Japanese girl who has a relationship with the ChatGPT for 2 years, right? That's weird. I mean, not weird, but like
pathological.
Why?
You want to say?
Yeah.
Carissa, please, can you elaborate on this a bit?
So super quickly about, I think it works now. Super quickly about trainees. So nobody likes to do boring jobs, but we want young people to have the skills necessary to go on with society in the way we want. And what are the skills necessary? That's up for debate. But for example, a lot of pilots, airplane pilots, are losing skills about how to land because autopilot has become too good. And what happens when the AI fails? Then more. So and that's more of a metaphor than a real example, because you might think that statistically. Yeah. And what do we lose when we forget about the analog? We lose everything. The analog is the primal world, and anything virtual depends on the analog. So if we forget how to take care of the natural world, we won't only lose the natural world, that too, but we will also lose the virtual, because we forget that a server is built with minerals, and it uses water, and so on and so forth. And so the analog is not only that it's a better option because it's more reliable, because we have thousands of years of experience with it, because it makes us more autonomous, but it's the substrate of everything else.
That's all we have. Vlad, final words from you, and I think we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, maybe just quick. Can you hear me? So about the future responsibility in terms of medicine and education, I think we really need to do more research. I would say we barely understand the tool, and we are putting too much maybe promise and expectations and hope. But if you go and look for credible research, you find very little. So I think really it's important to study more.
All our speakers are staying with us for a reception that we are holding outside. So all questions that haven't been asked, please join us in drinks. And right now, join me in saying thank you to our wonderful panelists. What is also going to happen now, we're going to start running Maya's artwork. Yes? Sorry?
Yeah, I can just quickly
Yeah?
talk about the work, because if you've been guessing.
Yeah, which one? Has anyone guessed which one is a human?
Well,
it's number 2? From number 4? This one. Okay, this one is the human because it's got pimples. Okay, which one is it?
Well, it's a bit of a trick title. There's possibly one human amongst them. So I'm sorry, I'm not revealing if there is one or not, but they're all, the other ones, they're human-looking robots, and they're all built by the Hiroshi Ishiguro.
So none of them is a human?
Well, possibly there is one. Possibly. Maybe not.
Okay, the mystery lingers. Just one last thing. We have got a thank you to all our panelists, and Rahel and Trixie, who are OMF children, are going to present them. So if you could come up here and say, these are our thank you. And just say, everyone. And I've got, can you give me, and I've got one to give to Mariah and to the Skoll team. Thank you very much for all your support to bring this event together. And courtesy of Skoll, we have got a reception going on outside. All our speakers are joining us, so we can continue the discussions over the next hour or so. The animation will be running on a continuous loop. Feel free to go in and out, bring in some food, continue with the discussions, and enjoy the animation. By the way, the animation is original artwork created by Maya Tami for OMF. Thank you.